everyone, I'm Lexi with the Ottawa Conservation District, and I'm here with Linda. She is a master naturalist and a master gardener volunteer here at Hemlock Crossing Nature Center, and she's been volunteering for about 2 or 3 years. Tell us how you got started volunteering here.
We lived in Missouri before we moved up here 4 years ago, and I retired, and I needed to have something to do, so I was a master gardener and trained in Ohio and then volunteered in Missouri as well. And when I got here, also became a master gardener volunteer. And the parks, this is just a beautiful park. Hemlock Crossing is, Ottawa County parks are amazing as far as I'm concerned. I've lived in 8 different Midwest states, and these are just phenomenal.
Absolutely. While spending your time volunteer here and going through the master's programs, you have to be passionate about plants. So why are you passionate about natives, and what value do you think that they provide to landscapes?
Native plants are imperative for us to keep our insect and bird populations alive. There has been way too much herbicide and pesticide use killing off our natives, and it's just for our world to exist as we want it in the future. We need to preserve our insects and our bird populations and our animals, and to do that we need to have native habitat for them. My mother was a huge nature lover up in northern Minnesota, and we took wildflower walks every season up there together and identified different plants, and I've always loved hiking out in the woods or looking at the prairies and figuring out what's there.
Do you think that there are any differences in caring for natives versus ornamental nursery plants?
Not really. A lot of people like to think that if you have a native garden you don't have to do any maintenance. So that is not true. They will reseed like crazy. Some of them will shoot out runners just like every other plant. They want to survive. So they do that by putting out seeds and putting out runners. You have to decide how much compactness you want in your native garden and how much airiness you want in your garden, and that will determine how much maintenance you do on it to start. Down the road you will still have to do maintenance on it to keep it looking and staying healthy.
What invasives do you guys deal with here at Hemlock?
We're pulling spotted knapweed fairly often. I haven't seen any buckthorn here, but I think they probably have cleaned most of that out. We deal a lot with, I don't think it's considered an invasive, but it's a nuisance, the sumac. Trouble with sumac, you cut it down, and all along its roots it sends up little babies, so it's really hard to get rid of. Brambles go crazy. We just cleared off the circle. If you've been to Hemlock, you come in by the Nature Center and there's a circle turnaround at the end, and we cleaned up that circle this year, and because it was full of sumac and brambles. And Barb Beck, my volunteer friend, has been helping do that this summer and last fall, and it's an ongoing struggle to keep those out of there. The same thing with the pollinator garden where the milkweed is. The brambles are pretty heavy on the north side of that, so we keep pulling them out and cutting them back to try to keep them out of there.
What is some of the wildlife that's being supported here with these different plantings? I know that's probably a long list.
Well, there's lots of chipmunks and squirrels. I personally haven't seen a groundhog, but I saw a hole in the circle that I thought for sure was big enough for a groundhog, but I have not seen the groundhog. Raccoon, deer, birds galore. There's a red-shouldered hawk that lives out in the woods south of here. You can hear him screeching every once in a while. Lots of different birds, bluebirds out here in the prairie, all the different kinds of finches and warblers out in the woods. You can hear them all the time. And of course we've got our crows and our vultures to clean up. Which is important. I think we've had deer in the garden behind us. I think there's been more than one because I think they've been laying down on top of the plants, which is part of why we're here. So we'd love to see them. I personally have not seen them, but they come out at dusk, so
they're sneaking around.
They're here when I'm not here.
If you were to recommend one simple change someone could make to support native plants in their own landscape, what would it be?
One of the things I think that's important is to realize that in the fall, you really shouldn't clean your garden completely. Insects, and especially bees, live in the stalks, or they live in the ground underneath the plants. So if you totally clean up your gardens in the fall, you are taking away the winter survival habitat for insects, for a lot of insects. So if there's one thing anyone can do that has a garden, that's it.
Okay.
I mean, I used to be able to say, I want to get this all cleaned up so it's ready to go in the spring. You know, that was my idea. But really, there's a ton of insects. The idea is that the air should be about 50 degrees for 5 days before you clean out your garden. Now, I don't always wait that long because here in Michigan on the coast of Lake Michigan, the temperatures go up and down a lot in the spring. So, but that's kind of the rule of thumb, is that the insects really don't come alive till it's consistently in the 50s.
So what are some of your duties here at Hemlock to care for the native beds?
Well, in the spring we come in and clean them up. We deadhead a lot of these plants. This is Rudbeckia triloba. It is sweet brown-eyed Susan or black-eyed Susan, I can't remember which. Each of these flowers has about 100 seeds, and there's probably 100 flowers on every plant. So this was not full of Rudbeckia triloba last year. We probably had one plant. So we will be pulling out a lot of this so that we don't have a monoculture garden. Because behind here, we have some beautiful grass. We have Rudbeckia, we have the regular brown-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta, and then we have coneflowers, and we have some other lovely little plants in here. There's some lupine that's hiding back there that blooms in the spring, but you can't see it because this is what happens if you let one plant take over. Now we leave the seed heads on, especially the coneflowers. Oh my gosh, the birds, especially the finches, just sit there and eat the seeds like crazy. And that's why you have coneflowers and Rudbeckia all over, because the birds eat the seeds and spread them. On the spot, we actually have an eastern prickly pear cactus that I uncovered when I started maintaining the gardens. It was covered in brambles and grasses, and it actually had 2 blooms this year. We were very happy about that. And like any other native, it could go crazy, but it's pretty limited here about what's going to happen. Right next to it is the Asclepias tuberosa, and it's done blooming. That is the orange butterfly weed. So this is the pollinator garden, and it is, last year it's just covered totally in milkweed, the common milkweed, prairie milkweed, common milkweed. This year the asters were really blooming in this area last year, and the goldenrod, and you can see that they've been seeded all over the place. So we'll be thinning the asters out a little bit this fall. We'll keep them in the middle and let the milkweed grow up around the edges. There's some research from Michigan State University that the butterflies tend to like to lay their eggs on milkweed that's on the edges. So this is the lead pine. It's gorgeous. It's got a grayish purple bloom on it, and as it ages it gets reddish, yellowish red. Some more Asclepias tuberosa behind there, the butterfly weed. That is not butterfly bush. Butterfly bush is Budelia. This is Asclepias. This is milkweed. But it doesn't have the sappy stuff. Okay, in the back is the cup plant. And since it rained last night, we can show this close up if you want. It's called the cup plant because the leaves make a little cup, and the birds drink the water out of that. It is very prolific, lots and lots of seeds. We pull up a lot of little babies every spring because otherwise it would take over. And then there's really the Indian grass is here. This is gray coneflower. It's all done blooming, but it leaves a head like this. There's another plant there that we've tied up because it was falling over all over the place. The big tall plant that's mostly stem with a little green at the top is prairie dock. Big, big, big fat leaves on the bottom. You have to have a lot of space for those 2 plants, the cup plant and the prairie dock, because they grow big. That doesn't spread quite as fast as the cup plant. So the goldenrod is back there, probably firecracker goldenrod, looking at it, hard to tell. A lot of purple coneflower, the standard Rudbeckia hirta. That's a beautiful plant, doesn't get more than about 2.5 feet, so if you don't want a tall plant like this sweet brown-eyed Susan, that's the one to put in your garden. I have both that, the hirtas and the echinaceas, which is the purple coneflowers in mine. This is the prairie drop seed. It's absolutely gorgeous. And that's grama grass. Grows off the side of it. Grama phyta. Some other grasses fit, some probably Pennsylvania sedge back down in there, that little clump. Or it could be, nope, that's prairie dropseed. It's just babies. So we'll have to move some of that next year too. Back underneath is a lupine, which is a spring bloomer. And this is plantain, Indian plantain. Has white flowers. And of course the liatris, or the gay feather. They've stopped blooming. That's after bloom. I think it's just a really cool head on it. And then this is called sneezeweed, and no, it doesn't make you sneeze. It's a helenium. It's just another little yellow plant. This little is hoary vervain, and this we will probably move over to the circle because it's growing out into the sidewalk. Some sand coreopsis in here, which likes more sun, so it's actually creeping forward. But there is Culver's root, which is a shade lover plant. It's got just seed heads now, but it has white arching blooms on it. I think this is called the woodland sunflower, but I'm not real sure.
That's beautiful.
I didn't plant it. And it wasn't planted here. It's been planted by birds. The shrubs are the native ninebark Physocarpus. They have white blooms on in the spring, and this spring there were hundreds of bees and other insects on it. It was just full. There was a black swallowtail on it, different flies and bees all over. It was just covered, and you could hear the hum from that plant. Rattlesnake master. It's like an agave kind of plant. Really, these are silvery colored when they're not aged. And it's in a group of pussy toes. This is pussy toes. They have tiny little white flowers in the spring, and the insects love it. And it is larval plant for the American lady butterfly. This is the turnaround circle at the end of the road, past the nature center. And last summer, we got word that David Van Ginhoven thought it looked pretty messy and wondered if we couldn't do something about it. So Barb and I tackled it last year. It was full of brambles and full of sumac. And this spring I took my string trimmer and my hedge trimmer and I cut everything down, and we raked it and raked and raked. We had piles of grass and debris 4 feet wide, 3 feet tall, and 20 feet long times 2. And poor Tom had to clean it all up. So now we're seeing the native grasses that were actually planted here to start with. There's also some other plants coming up. And we're finding a whole bunch of milkweed in here that we never saw before. So there's prairie dropseed, Indian grass, little blue stem. We've got some sweet-eyed sweet Susan, brownie Susans. Some prairie coreopsis that the rabbits keep chewing down. A couple cup plants coming in here. Put a bunch of seeds in. You'll see if over winter if the stratification happens. A lot of the native plants, the seeds, if you just get seeds, they have to be stratified a certain number of days cold and wet. Or damp, not wet. If you get seeds by the mail, you have to actually put them in your refrigerator on like paper towels to keep a certain number of days.
Okay.
So you can find information online about that. Prairie Moon Nursery out of, it's in Minnesota, Winona, Minnesota, has some great information on that. That's what the great coneflower little flower looks like. And then it ends up with just a seed head. So we put in some Monarda, some blue lobelia, but you can see all the different types of seed heads here. They're just gorgeous. I mean, but yeah, we realized that after we cleaned it off, it's like, oh my gosh, there are like native grasses planted in here. But we're still fighting the brambles. We will forever. There's a bramble right here. So we just dig them up. Keep digging them up. So we plan to put a little more color in here. Not a lot. Beautiful the way it is.
Well, thank you for taking us around to all those plants. That was incredible. You guys have so much going on here. Are there any final points about natives that you want people to know?
Yes, there is. Michigan's really blessed with a number of nurseries and plant creators who do just natives. There's a Michigan Wildflower Association that you can join. They have had a great conference every year, but they aren't going to have it this year, obviously, or next year. But there's a lot of nurseries that just do native plants. and you want to buy a native plant that is native to where you're living, not a native plant from Colorado or a native plant from Virginia. There's the ones that'll survive. You also want to look at, okay, is this plant suitable for dry sandy soil, which is what we have here? Is it suitable for clay, which you have out in your Hudsonville? Is it suitable for a moist, wet, damp area? Because plants will not survive in the wrong soil. You have to plant the right plant in the right place. The other thing that you need to be aware of is when you do plant, the first year it sleeps, the second year it creeps, and the third year it leaps. So be patient. And then be sure to maintain it. There are some horticulturists and gardeners all around the state that actually just maintain native plantings. So if you want a native garden and you really don't know that you can maintain it, just research and find someone in your area that will help you maintain a native garden.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Linda, so much for talking to me and for showing us all these plants. Thank you for watching. Stick around for some more videos we have leading up to our Fall Native Plant Sale, and you can find all the information about the Fall Native Plant Sale online at ottawacd.org.